Thank you, University of Massachusetts, UMass, one of the most prestigious, one of the finest universities in the world. So obviously students are also one of the finest minds of the world. Thank you all the students who are here in such large numbers on such a cold winter evening, a very rare thing after 6:37 for all of you to collect here. I don't know what's the reason, maybe your passion for India, maybe your passion for Kashmir. Whatever it is, it's good that we are all here. I want to talk about Kashmir and why Kashmir is so important for world peace. You must have heard almost every political leader, religious gurus, all kinds of intellectuals, the liberal media, the progressive people, the woke people, and all the so-called good and wise people of the world always talk about world peace. They have all the power. They are in political power. They have spiritual power, religious power. They are academicians. They control New York Times, Washington Times, CNN, all the wise people. UNO, Human Rights Council of UNO, World Security Council, there are environmental bodies, G20s, G8, G100s, all kinds of things. All the power today is with people who talk about world peace. Still, we don't have peace. The history of humanity, there has not been, if somebody has to do mapping, if some young student wants to do it, wants to volunteer it, I am willing to sponsor it. One should do a mapping. There has not been even one day in the history of humanity where there has not been a war on this earth. As I speak to you, a war is going on somewhere or the other. There has been so much of violence and bloodshed and so much of conflict throughout the history, evolution of human beings, that now it's become part of our DNA's memory. And which is why you see in your own life, if there is no conflict, you get disturbed. Human minds have started feeding on conflict. Professor Jerry was here, he was talking about mindfulness, he would agree with me. We need conflict in everything. And to cover up this guilt, we have created this fake narrative of humanity, human rights, and world peace. The people who champion the cause of world peace are the biggest funders of warlords of Middle East. They are the largest producers of all kinds of weaponry. And they are the architects of all the world's geopolitical conflicts. And not only that, they are also leading the world in creating economic disparity. And this disparity also creates conflict. To cover up this guilt, we have created this narrative of world peace. But now let me first tell you what actually is world peace. I come from the land, the oldest land in the world, which actually discovered what humanity is all about. When the entire world was fighting with each other for a piece of land or pieces of land, when people are invading with armies, killing other human beings, and living with tribal consciousness basically is when you assume that the other person, somebody who does not follow your faith and your beliefs, is the evil person. And tribal consciousness believes in killing and destroying those others. The entire West, even pre-Christianity, pre-Jesus Christ, post-Jesus Christ, pre-Muhammad Sahab, post-Muhammad Sahab, was full of conflict of killing those others. And that's why the plural, inclusive pagan culture was destroyed by the church. Then there was a conflict between Jews and Christians and then Muslims, and this entire history, World War I, World War II, it was not created by the East, but everybody in this globe became victim of this conflict, which was the architects were somebody else, the people who always kept talking about peace, forgiveness and salvation. And while this conflict and bloodshed, this barbaric violence was going on, if you don't believe me, just see Games of Thrones or any Hollywood movie, or you see the evolution of humanity and all these kind of things on Netflix. See the kind of inhuman and barbaric violence. It's unimaginable, unfathomable. At that time, even before that, there was a group of people, a society, which was trying to understand the role of mind and how to control this mind so that your mind becomes meditative, peaceful, and create oneness in humanity. And that's why we discovered yoga and spirituality. At the time when all these people with their swords were killing innocent people of the other countries and other faiths and other communities, at that time, there was a land where I come from, we actually created 4 most peaceful religions. Buddhism, which basically specialized, these are all specialized branches of Hinduism. Hinduism, actually there is no religion. Nowhere you will never find any text, scripture. There is nothing nobody knows what is Hinduism. But what actually we understand is Hinduism is coming from Vedanta. And Vedanta is also not religion. Vedanta is a science of liberation. It's a science of oneness. The entire Upanishad and Vedanta, I'm sorry, pardon my knowledge, I'm standing with one of the greatest scholars of Indic knowledge, but whatever I have understood, to make it very simple, the entire Vedanta is about moving from ignorance to knowledge, from darkness to light. And is one of the most evolved, the greatest of the philosophies of the world, which all Nobel Prize winning philosophers, physicists, scientists, Albert Einstein, and greatest of the leaders have acknowledged as the only principle of humanity. All this is coming from the land of Kashmir. It's not coming from Kashi. Even Shankaracharya from Kerala went to Kashmir to understand the whole concept of oneness, of non-dualism. Some people are shaking their hands, which means non-dualism has reached America also. So in Kashmir, we were discovering these great concepts. For 1,000 years, people who do not know, a Shastrat, an argument between followers of Advaita and Buddhists, went on 1,000 of dialogue and debate. And that's when Buddhism and Advaita both found their own identities. In which other society you find this kind of constructive dialogue? We were arguing, there was a debate, there was a dialogue. Aapne Shankaracharya and Manan Mishra, you must have heard about it. It went on for 32 days, if I am not wrong. Dualism versus non-dualism. And then ultimately Mandan Mishra became a student or a follower of Adi Shankaracharya, and he went to South and he opened that ashram. Well, why I am saying this, I am trying to tell you, you will never, very rarely you will find Indians talking about humanity or equal rights. The reason is because it's in our DNA, we don't have to talk about it. We are not guilty of invading anyone. We are not guilty of killing anyone. We are not even guilty of intellectual terrorism, which is to change someone's mind forcefully, by mischief, by plotting, by scheming. We have not created an education system which actually brainwashes young minds and make them soldiers of your own political ideology, which is happening in all modern universities in the West today. And which is why you will find even the Indian students, young kids born to Indian families whose parents have sacrificed everything to raise them, today stand against the cause of India, and they support those people who actually are killing innocent people in Kashmir, the terrorists. Which is why you will find when Article 370 was abrogated, so many Indian students stood up against it and started supporting Pakistan's cause and the terrorist cause. Imagine, it's unimaginable. That is intellectual terrorism. Now today India is fighting a war not just at one front of fighting people with guns and money to buy more guns and weapons, not just terrorists. India is also fighting the intellectual terrorists who have taken over the entire media. I am surprised the whole world talks about what is the narrative around Kashmir. The narrative around Kashmir in the West, in America, all you students, please correct me if I am wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong. When you talk to somebody about Kashmir, what is the first complaint they have? That young people or people in Kashmir do not have 4G. Isn't it? That is the biggest complaint. New York Times write articles on that. Washington Post writes on that. 4G? Some people don't have 4G. People who are killing others don't have 4G, and the world is saying that there are no human rights to these people. There are 700,000 people who don't have their homes in Kashmir. There are people who lost their lives until 1 month ago or 3 weeks ago. Terrorists went into a school. They asked all the teachers, imagine you are a teacher, imagine they asked you to stand up, show your ID card, and if you are a Hindu, they shot you point blank. All those videos and pictures are available. Nobody is talking about them. Not a word. That is intellectual terrorism. Denial is the biggest crime you can make. The entire Western world has gone into denying that anything took place in Kashmir. Why? Because Kashmir doesn't have any oil. If Kashmir had oil, then Kashmir's cause would have been at the forefront. Or if Kashmiri Pandits had owned Hollywood, media channels, newspapers, if you are smart kids, you will understand what I am saying, then US in every city would have had American museums of Kashmir genocide, along with the Holocaust museums. But it was totally denied. And that is a very shameful thing. This denial is the reason why we don't have world peace. And what is world peace after all? World peace is just a weapon, an instrument to sell your products. This entire exercise of globalization is to make all the cultures of the world uniform so that some strong marketing companies or marketing countries can sell their products and ideas to the world. And Kashmir doesn't fit into a scheme of things. If Kashmir becomes a market, if Kashmir becomes a vote bank, then everybody will recognize the pain and suffering of Kashmiri Pandits. And how they do it? Their strategy is to create doubt. You say 4,000 Kashmiri Pandits were killed. The easiest thing is to write an article in New York Times and say, no, only 219 were killed. Now you have a debate around that. You say a woman was cut alive on a saw machine. You say, no, she wasn't cut alive. She was dead before she was cut. And you start debating on that. 4G, 3G, 2G, these are all useless debates. The only thing we have to look at is, are people still dying? Are people still being killed? Since 1947, this is the world's longest continuous genocide. This is the only truth. This is a states, not one state, many states sponsored longest continuous genocide against Hindus in Kashmir. And the entire world is silent on that. And anybody who speaks about it, they call it propaganda. And if you raise your voice a little more, then they'll say you are a fascist, you are a nationalist. You are being abused for mentioning the pain and suffering of 700,000 people who for 32 years have not been able to go to their homes. And this denial is coming from people whose life revolves around their homes only. And that's why we do not have world peace, because of this selective world peace. This selective concept of humanity, this hypocrisy. And which is why we decided to make this film and bring this truth in front of the world. A lot of people have been asking us, why are you in US before releasing the film? Answer is very simple. Because there are so many countries in the world, US is the only country which has shown such keen interest in Kashmir. But not for Kashmiri Pandits. For the interest of the terrorists. Before I end, I just want to showcase the biggest hypocrisy. And that hypocrisy is this. That the entire liberal thought, the entire woke thought, the entire progressive thought, democrat thought, secular thought is about what? It's anti-conservatism. It's anti-fundamentalism. It's against violence. But in Kashmir, where Kashmiri Pandits were 100% in population, today they are 0%. Where people are killed on continuous basis, where schools are being destroyed, where police officers are being killed, where army officers are being killed, where Sikhs are being killed, where Buddhists are being killed, where Jains are being killed, where Christians are being killed, where human beings are being killed, the entire West is silent on that. The entire progressive world, the liberal world, the radical, the secular world, they are absolutely silent on that. And I find it's so hypocritical that nobody even cares to call it out. And that's why this film. This film will not show you what humanity is all about. This film will show you what humanity is not about. This film is not about you or me, this and that. It's not about others. This film is about only one concept, that we are all one. And this concept of oneness was discovered in Kashmir. And that concept of oneness is a threat to people with tribal consciousness. Kashmir stood for creative consciousness. All great things, all creative things you would know, Vedas to Upanishads, to yoga, to Ayurveda, to Panchtantra, to Kalidas, to Abhinav Gupta's philosophy, to musicology, to astronomy, to the concept of Saraswati, which is music, art, literature, wisdom, knowledge. All these great things were discovered in Kashmir by these great scholars who ultimately were known as Kashmiri Pandits. And anybody who thinks Kashmiri Pandit stands for Brahmins, you are wrong. Pandit is a upadhi. It's a title. And today there is nothing in Kashmir except for a radical religious mindset. A radical religious mindset which believes that if you do not believe in my faith, you ought to be killed. And the world is silent. This is not world peace. That's all I have to tell you today. If Kashmir has to be saved, then it's not just the film, not just the books, but the hypocrisy of this world peace lobby has to be called out. Our children have to be told what world peace is not. And then only you will find world peace, then only you will find peace in this land of Kashmir, where the first concept of peace and humanity was symbolized in the name of Shiva. The third eye of Shiva, Professor Sen Gupta, is about when left and right meet and become one. As long as we are fighting on the lines of left, right, east or west, there will be no world peace. The world peace lies in oneness. It lies in becoming Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you very much.